echo of oil subsidy may be the loudest sound that may refuse to recede and may drown the merry noise of exit as President Muhammadu Buhari leaves the Aso Rock Villa later this month to either his hometown Daura Katsina State or Niger Republic by his own choice. The second sound will surely be his failure to end insurgency and bring back all the Chibok girls after gaining so much political capital from insurgency. His hatred for restructuring after promising Nigerians to do so will also be clanging after him. A few weeks ago, the president reneged on his promise and widely announced decision to remove subsidy on petrol. In what looked like a confidence trick, the federal government had obtained an $800 million facility from the World Bank. The facility was announced as a means to address the untoward effects of the removal of subsidy on petrol. A number of Nigerians began to buy into the policy.
We've been running this subsidy regime, for many years, and we haven't seen the impact on the economy in a positive way. Nigeria is a very amazing country where people insist on doing the wrong thing, and then they insist on it with such vigor, that it becomes policy, and everybody just throws their arms up in the air. That is all we can say about the subsidy thing. It's completely anachronistic, it's completely unnecessary, and it's completely destructive of an economy such as ours, where the government does not earn enough, and then you just claim that you're putting money in people's pockets to enable them buy petrol for their cars to drive around. To what end? We're not subsidizing food, we're not subsidizing education, we're not subsidizing healthcare. These are the things that matter to human beings, from day to day. But to say, let's give you enough money to put petrol in your car, to go where? How many Nigerians own cars? This is actually shameful, and I'm embarrassed that the government continues to kick the can down the road instead of doing the right thing.
The government has, however, backtracked. It would now leave subsidy removal or no to the incoming administration. Finance Minister Zainab Ahmed, following media queries on what will become of the $800 million facility obtained from the World Bank to cushion the effects of the removal of subsidy on petrol and on citizens, has explained that the Buhari administration is not going back on the policy. It is only that after a Council of State meeting, it was decided that the timing was not quite right.
It is not going to be removed now, which means it will not be removed before the transition is completed. That's what it means. But then we have two laws that have inadvertently made the provision that we should exit by June. So if the committee's work, which will include the representatives of the incoming administration, determine that the removal can be done by June, then the work plan will be designed to exit as of June. But if the determination is that the period needs to be extended, it will mean that we will have, as a country, will have to revisit the Appropriation Act, for example, because the 2023 budget only made provision up to June.
The 2023 federal budget provides for payment of subsidy on petrol up till June. In other words, the Buhari administration anticipated that it will exit with the policy. Last Monday, the Edo State Governor, Godwin Obaseki, raised a red flag. At the May Day celebration in Benin, Governor Obaseki said that Nigeria was in such a precarious financial position that unless subsidy on petrol was stopped, no tier of government will be able to pay workers' salaries. Of course, unless the central bank begins to print and distribute unearned money through ways and means.
The economy of our country is in a terrible state. It will be a miracle for the federal government and state governments to pay salaries beyond June this year. without resorting to massively printing money or removing fuel subsidy.
The Nigerian Labour Congress has consistently opposed the removal of subsidy on petrol. Their position is now being supported by some industry players who argue that subsidy regime is a major challenge to the transparent management of Nigeria's downstream oil industry.
The kind of money government is spending on subsidy, you can literally install several, even if it's minimal, producing capacities of modular refineries all over the country. Every zone should have one or two. That's where you know that you've reduced automatically importation of these products.
In 2012, a coalition of opposition politicians, including the present Minister of Works and Housing, Babatunde Fashola, fiery evangelist politician Tunde Bakare, human rights activist and lawyer Femi Falana, labor leaders and interested civil society organizations called for regime change, another name for bringing down the government outside of the electoral process. Their reason for mounting the insurrectionist protest was because the then federal government, under Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, made a move to remove subsidy on petrol. The protesters said that there was no subsidy on petrol. The subsidy regime was a scam, they said.
I don't understand what the Nigerian economists and the members of the government, their definition of that they are subsidizing Nigerians for the oil they are buying. Who is subsidizing who? The Nigerian oil industry, petroleum industry, was developed with Nigerian capital. In fact, most of the expertise are Nigerians. If you go into the field, it's Nigerian capital, it's Nigerian oil. What I understand Nigeria should charge Nigerians is the cost of 1 barrel at the wellhead, and then the cost of transportation to the refinery, the cost of refining it, and its cost at the pump. If anybody said he is subsidizing anything, he is a fraud. So all these people talking about subsidy, who is subsidizing? But there is so much fraud, as I said, and indiscipline and corruption that I don't talk about it. But the day I have to talk about it, I will ask the petroleum economists to come and tell me who is subsidizing Nigerian oil. Whose oil is it? We had 4 refineries with a capacity of 480,000 barrels a day. Let's see if they are because of corruption, they have virtually allowed those refineries, to become so inefficient that I don't think they produce half their capacity.
Jonathan administration is a neo-colonial regime. As where our country is run like a satellite of imperialism. And what the youths have turned to do, in alliance with workers and the progressive forces in our country, is to seize our freedom from the IMF and World Bank. As we are gathered here today, Nigerians are demonstrating in New York in front of the office of the World Bank so that we can fight against the imperialist forces that have made it impossible for our country to service our people. And we hope we can sustain this. This is the only way to liberate our people from the shackles of injustice and oppression.
Time has come for the people of Nigeria to rise and say enough, enough, enough.
It appears now that President Muhammadu Buhari, the masquerade behind the protests and the political beneficiary of the protests, has eaten the humble pie, paying subsidy far in excess of what his own minders and promoters condemned as a scam. As Buhari hands over the petrol subsidy policy to the incoming administration, Industry players are querying two developments. First, was Buhari sincere in his approach to the subsidy policy? And if he was, why did he leave engaging with the policy until a few days to the end of his tenure?
This government has no business talking about removal of fuel subsidy after 8 years in power. We had thought, at least those in my industry, the oil and gas industry, thought that it should have been one of the first major initiatives of this government. In as much as we all agree that subsidy must and should be removed, it is impossible to just abruptly shut down subsidy without causing a major upheaval in the economic, social, and political structure of the country.
The presidential candidates of the three leading political parties, Atiku Abubakar of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Peter Obi of Labour Party, and Ahmed Bola Tinubu of the All Progressives Congress, in the course of their campaigns, promised to remove subsidy on petrol. If Muhammadu Buhari promised to end the subsidy regime on petrol and chickened out, even after securing $800 million facility to address the challenges which the policy change could bring, preferring political to economic gain, why should an incoming administration stop a populist policy that ensures it political capital?
The subsidy had always been a scam from the beginning. Subsidy has always been a bloody scam in this country. It was a generational theft. It was an industry-wide scam. It was a welfare designed by the rich who had held this country by the jugular for God knows how long. They didn't just realize this thing was a scam yesterday or today. When Jonathan wanted, former President Jonathan wanted to remove subsidy, if you recall, was it 2012? This government and all those in power today almost brought down the roof on him. They almost brought down the roof. They call this subsidy a scam. They get to power and they begin to implement the same subsidy. In fact, the subsidy has gradually grown every month. We're doing about 1.2 trillion on a monthly basis in subsidy payments. It is horrendous. It's unconscionable.
For the removal of subsidy to make both political and economic sense, industry players advise on a number of steps before its removal.
There are some basic fundamental steps that ought to be in place before you even begin to dream about subsidy removal. First and foremost, we have several refineries in the country. None is producing, none is refining. They are miserably, abysmally giving us less than 5-10% capacity. The first and foremost thing a government that is serious about removal of subsidy should do is, in the minimum, encourage the installation of modular refineries all over the country, in addition to making sure that all your local refineries are refining. That's the minimum.
As Muhammadu Buhari, a retired army general whose constituency, the military, foisted the subsidy regime on Nigeria, a former head of state, a former minister of petroleum, and an elected president for 2 terms of 8 years, leaves office and seemed afraid of confronting the fuel subsidy monster, Nigerians look forward to a man of sterner stuff to tame this monster and set Nigeria's petroleum downstream industry free. Is there the man? And can it be done?